Rich Dad's Guide to Investing by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Picture yourself at 12 years old, bare feet sinking into warm Hawaiian sand. Waves lap gently at your toes while you walk beside your best friend and his father, a man who's become like a second dad to you. He's gesturing toward a massive 10-acre piece of oceanfront property, one of the most stunning and valuable parcels in your entire town. Then he drops a casual bombshell. He just bought it. Your brain does a backflip trying to process this. This man, your rich dad, earns less than your own father, a highly paid government official. Your poor dad couldn't even dream of affording land like this. So you gather your courage and ask the question that will reshape your entire life. How can you afford to buy this when my dad can't? Rich Dad drapes his arm around your shoulder, a warm smile crossing his face as he shares a secret that forms the bedrock of how wealthy people build their fortunes. I can't afford to buy this land either, he says, but my business can. That single sentence sparked an education you'll never find in any classroom. It's the foundation of Rich Dad's Guide to Investing by Robert T. Kiyosaki, a book that reveals exactly what the wealthy invest in that the poor and middle class simply don't. After the massive success of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which sold tens of millions of copies and revolutionized how people think about money, Kiyosaki takes us deeper into the rabbit hole. He shares the detailed, step-by-step guidance his rich dad gave him after returning from Vietnam in 1973, broke, jobless, and without a single asset to his name. All he had was a burning dream to become truly wealthy, not just well-paid. This isn't some collection of hot stock tips or overnight success schemes. It's a complete mindset transformation. It's about understanding the fundamental difference between the 90% of investors who share just 10% of the wealth and the 10% who control the other 90%. What you're about to discover is the exact roadmap that took Robert Kiyosaki from absolute zero to financial freedom. By the time we're done, you'll understand the 5 phases every sophisticated investor moves through. You'll know the secret of the BI triangle that transforms simple ideas into massive fortunes. And most importantly, you'll crack the riddle that separates wealth creators from wealth consumers. This is your playbook for moving from the outside of the investment world to the inside, where the real magic happens. The journey to becoming genuinely wealthy doesn't start with money. It starts with a choice. When young Robert Kiyosaki returned from war, he stood at a crossroads. As a decorated pilot, a lucrative, secure airline career was practically gift-wrapped and waiting for him. It was exactly what his highly educated father, his poor dad, had always envisioned. Go to school, earn good grades, land a safe job with solid benefits. The classic security-first path. But Robert had also spent his childhood absorbing a completely different philosophy from his rich dad, who taught him that life wasn't about finding jobs, but creating them. His lessons weren't about climbing the corporate ladder, but owning it entirely. When Robert sat down with Rich Dad in 1973, he was offered a fundamental choice that every single one of us faces, whether we realize it or not. Rich Dad explained, "When it comes to money, people have 3 core priorities: to be secure, to be comfortable, or to be rich. All 3 matter, but the order you prioritize them determines your financial destiny. Most people choose security first. They crave that steady paycheck, that guarantee. Once secure, they focus on comfort, the bigger house, the nicer car. For them, becoming rich is a distant third priority, a someday maybe dream they'll never sacrifice comfort or security to achieve." This, Rich Dad explained, is why only 3 out of 100 people ever become truly wealthy. Robert, having witnessed both his fathers, lives, one struggling financially despite a great career, the other building an empire from nothing, made his choice. He decided to put being rich first. Security and comfort would follow naturally, but they wouldn't drive his decisions. This was the crucial first step in his mental preparation. Phase 1 of Rich Dad's master plan. With that decision made, Rich Dad introduced the next mental shift. There are only two kinds of money problems in the world: not enough money and too much money. Which problem do you want? This question sounds simple, but it cuts deep into our programming. Most of us grow up in households where the only problem we know is not enough money. We're trained to think in scarcity terms. We hear things like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "I can't afford that." That mindset becomes our reality. Rich Dad's world, on the other hand, was one of abundance. His problem was always having too much money flowing in and needing smart places to put it to work. He explained that your internal reality about money creates your external reality. Believe money is scarce, and you'll live a scarce life. This is why lottery winners so often crash and burn. They suddenly have enormous wealth, but their minds are still wired for scarcity, so they unconsciously burn through the money to return to the world they understand. To become rich, you first have to rewire your inner world. You have to start seeing the possibility of a world overflowing with money. This mindset shift lets you see opportunity where others see risk. Rich Dad believed that the more security a person craves, the more scarcity they'll experience. People who are creative, cooperative, and willing to learn new financial skills, however, live lives of increasing abundance. This brings us to the core engine of Rich Dad's entire philosophy, the cash flow quadrant. He'd sketch a simple cross on paper, creating 4 sections: E, S, B, and I. E stands for employee. You have a job. S stands for self-employed or specialist. You own a job. Think doctors or lawyers. B stands for business owner. You own a system, and people work for you. I stands for investor. Your money works for you. Poor Dad's advice was to be a successful E or S, get educated, land a secure job, or become a highly paid professional. But Rich Dad's guidance pointed in an entirely different direction. He said the path to true wealth lies on the right side of the quadrant, in the B and I sections. Why? Because the rules are completely different there, especially the tax rules. The poor and middle class work for money, Rich Dad would say. The rich have their money work for them. The B and I quadrants are where you learn how to do that. But here's the problem. Our school system is designed almost exclusively to train people for the E and S quadrants. We learn to be good employees, but never learn how to be business owners or investors. This is why, when Robert came home from war with a few $1,000s saved, he eagerly asked to invest alongside his Rich Dad. "Can I invest with you?" The room went silent. Rich Dad and his son Mike looked uncomfortable. Finally, Rich Dad said something that shocked Robert to his core. It would be against the law. "Against the law?" Robert asked, confused. "Are you doing something illegal?" "No," Rich Dad chuckled. "It's not illegal for us to invest in these deals, but it would be illegal for you." "Why?" "Because you're not rich," Mike said gently. This was Robert's first glimpse into a secret world of investing, governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. The SEC has rules designed to protect average investors from the riskiest deals. To access these exclusive, high-potential opportunities, you have to be what's called an accredited investor. At the time, this meant earning at least $200,000 annually, or having a net worth over $1 million. Robert, with his few $1,000s, wasn't even close. The very laws designed to protect him were also walling him off from the world's best investments. As Rich Dad explained, this is one of the primary reasons the rich get richer. They get access to deals the poor and middle class never even hear about. This realization could have crushed him. Instead, it ignited something. Rich Dad then explained that being an accredited investor was just the first level, a qualification based purely on money. But there was a higher level, far more powerful, the sophisticated investor. A sophisticated investor, he said, has the 3 E's: education, experience, and excess cash. Many accredited investors, like movie stars or doctors, have the excess cash, but they often lack the financial education and real-world experience, which is why they frequently lose their money in bad deals. A truly sophisticated investor knows how to analyze deals, understand the laws, and create wealth from the inside out. And so, Robert's new goal crystallized. He didn't just want to be an accredited investor, he wanted to become a sophisticated investor. This decision launched him into Phase 2 of Rich Dad's plan, understanding the different categories of investors. Rich Dad laid out a 5-level hierarchy. 1. The accredited investor, the person with high income or high net worth. 2. The qualified investor, someone who understands the difference between the 2 main schools of stock market investing, fundamental and technical. Fundamental investors, like Warren Buffett, analyze the health of the business itself, financial statements, management quality, market position. Technical investors, like George Soros, focus more on market sentiment and price patterns. They study charts and investor emotions. A qualified investor can read both the business and the market, making money whether markets rise or fall. 3. The sophisticated investor, where things get really interesting. The sophisticated investor understands not just investing, but the laws governing it, tax law, corporate law, and securities law. They use the law to their advantage, maximizing returns and minimizing risk in ways average investors simply can't. 4. The inside investor, the person who creates the investment. Instead of just buying shares in a company, they build the company. They're the entrepreneurs, the business builders. 5. The ultimate investor, the pinnacle. The ultimate investor is an inside investor who builds a business so successful they can take it public. They become the selling shareholder, while the rest of the world lines up to be the buying shareholders. Think Bill Gates with Microsoft or Jeff Bezos with Amazon. Seeing this latter, Robert felt overwhelmed. No money, no business. How could he possibly start? Rich Dad smiled and pointed to level 4, the inside investor. This is where you'll start, he said. Even with very little money, it's possible to start on the inside. You start by building a business. This was revolutionary. Most people think you need money to make money, but Rich Dad's plan was different. Create an asset, a business, that would generate the cash to buy other assets. This brings us to the 90/10ths riddle, one of the book's most powerful concepts. Rich Dad would regularly challenge Robert with this puzzle. He'd draw a blank financial statement, the simple form with columns for income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and ask, how do you fill your asset column without buying any assets? Think about that for a moment. How do you acquire assets without spending money? The answer is the secret of the 10% who control 90% of the wealth. You create them. You take an idea from your mind and build it into something that generates income. This is the essence of entrepreneurship. Bill Gates didn't get rich saving his paycheck to buy stocks. He created an asset. Microsoft. The Beatles created assets, their songs, that still pay royalties today. At 9 years old, Robert and Mike did this on a small scale. Rich Dad made them work for free, forcing them to figure out how to make money. They noticed the convenience store was throwing out old comic books. They took that trash and created an asset, a comic book library for neighborhood kids, charging a small admission fee. They turned trash into cash. The real asset wasn't the comic books themselves. It was the idea, the system they built around them. This is the power of the B quadrant. And to harness this power, you need a blueprint. This is where we enter phase 3, how to build a strong business. Rich Dad taught Robert that every successful business is built on a structure he called the BI triangle. This is the framework that gives an idea the strength to become a real wealth-generating asset. The BI triangle has 8 key components. It all starts with the mission. A business built only to make money is weak. A strong business has a mission that's both spiritual and commercial. It fills a genuine need. Henry Ford's mission was to democratize the automobile. He wanted to make cars available to everyone, not just the rich. The Rich Dad Company's mission is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. A powerful mission is the fuel that gets a business through the brutal early years. The next 2 components form the outer edges of the triangle, team and leadership. Business, Rich Dad stressed, is a team sport. In school, you're taught to take tests alone. Cooperating is called cheating. In business, trying to do everything alone is a recipe for disaster. A B quadrant entrepreneur builds a team of smart advisors, accountants, attorneys, brokers, and mentors. They know that to be successful, they shouldn't be the smartest person on their team. The leader's job is to bring out the best in that team, hold the vision, and make the tough decisions. Inside the triangle are the 5 internal systems of the business. 1. Cash flow management, the lifeblood. A business can look profitable on paper but go bankrupt because it runs out of cash. Understanding how to manage the flow of money in and out of the business is the most fundamental business skill. 2. Communications management. Rich Dad used to say, cash flowing in is in direct proportion to communication flowing out. This is about sales and marketing. You have to be able to communicate the value of your product or service. This is why Robert took a job at Xerox, not for the money, but for their legendary sales training program. He had to overcome his fear of rejection to learn how to sell. 3. Systems management. A true B quadrant business runs on systems. McDonald's is a perfect example. It's a system so brilliant that teenagers can run it, delivering the same product consistently anywhere in the world. An S quadrant business relies on the owner. If the owner goes on vacation, the income stops. A B quadrant business has systems that work even when the owner isn't there. 4. Legal management. In the information age, your most valuable assets are often your ideas, your intellectual property. Protecting those ideas with patents, trademarks, and copyrights is crucial. A simple legal document, like a contract, can be the foundation of a billion-dollar enterprise. 5. Product management. Interestingly, Rich Dad believed the product was the least important part of the triangle. The world is full of great products, but it's short on great business systems. Most of us can cook a better hamburger than McDonald's, but very few of us can build a better business system. Mastering this BI triangle is what allows an entrepreneur to take a simple idea and turn it into a powerful, self-sustaining asset. And once you've successfully built a business, you've gained the education and experience to move into phase 4, becoming a sophisticated investor. A sophisticated investor thinks differently from an average investor. They see a world of financial gray, not just black and white. They understand that there's such a thing as good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is using a credit card to buy a TV. Good debt is borrowing money to buy an apartment building that generates positive cash flow every month. They also understand good expenses and bad expenses. A bad expense is a fancy dinner that's just for pleasure. A good expense is taking your financial team out for a business dinner to strategize, an expense that's tax deductible and could make you millions. Rich Dad's revolutionary idea was that he used his expense column to get richer. The average person uses their expense column to get poorer. How? A business owner in the B quadrant can spend money on things like education, travel, meals, and even cars before they pay taxes. An employee in the E quadrant earns money, gets taxed heavily, and then has to pay for all those things with what's left over. A sophisticated investor understands how to use the tax and corporate laws to have their business buy their assets. That's what Rich Dad meant on the beach all those years ago. His business, operating under a different set of rules, could afford the land with pre-tax dollars, an advantage his poor dad, the employee, simply didn't have. This is why Rich Dad wanted low income and high expenses. The average person wants high income and low expenses. The wealthy person wants to show as little personal income as possible and run as many expenses as possible through their business to acquire more assets. It's a completely different way of thinking. It's seeing the other side of the coin. Once you've mastered the mindset of the sophisticated investor and the skills of the inside investor, you have the potential to reach the final level, the ultimate investor. This is the person who builds a company so strong they can take it public, selling shares to millions of other investors. This is how the young billionaires of the information age are being created. They don't just find a company to invest in. They are the company that everyone else wants to invest in. They're literally printing their own money, legally, by creating valuable shares of stock from an idea. This entire journey from broke veteran to ultimate investor is a process. It took Robert Kiyosaki 20 years. He made and lost his first million by the time he was 30. His first big business, a nylon and Velcro wallet company, was a huge success, and then a spectacular failure. But he didn't quit. He learned from his mistakes. Rich Dad taught him that mistakes are where the magic happens. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before he invented the light bulb. If he'd been an employee, he would have been fired. As an entrepreneur, his failures were just steps on the path to success. The final piece of the puzzle, Phase 5, is perhaps the most profound, giving it back. Rich Dad was a quiet but massive philanthropist. He believed that true wealth came with a responsibility to contribute to society. He said, "The more people I serve, the richer I become." He built foundations, funded cancer research, and supported his church. He taught Robert that hoarding wealth was a misuse of its power. The ultimate goal of becoming rich wasn't just to have a lot of money. It was to have enough to make a real difference in the world. So the path is clear. It begins with a mental choice. It requires a financial education that schools don't provide. It demands the courage to build a business, to create assets from ideas, and it culminates in a life of not just abundance, but also purpose. It's the journey from being an average investor, tossed about by the whims of the market, to becoming a sophisticated investor who can thrive in any condition. It's about taking control of your financial life and, ultimately, designing the future you want. As we look back on the journey Robert Kiyosaki lays out in Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, it's easy to get swept up in the big, exciting ideas, building businesses, taking companies public, becoming a billionaire. But if we strip everything down, the single most powerful lesson in this entire book isn't about a specific strategy or a legal loophole. It's about a fundamental shift in identity. The book's deepest message is the challenge to move from being a consumer to being a creator. Most of the world is trained to be consumers. We consume products, we consume entertainment, and when it comes to investing, we consume assets that other people have created. We buy stocks in companies someone else built. We buy mutual funds, curated by someone else. We are, as Rich Dad would say, on the outside looking in. We're buying tickets to the game. The 90/10 riddle, how do you fill your asset column without buying assets, is a profound reframing of this reality. It forces you to ask, what can I create? This is the question that defines the entrepreneur, the artist, the inventor. It's the mindset of the 10%. They aren't just playing the game, they're designing it. They're selling the tickets. In today's information age, this idea is more accessible than it has ever been in human history. In the agrarian age, you needed to be born into land to be wealthy. In the industrial age, you needed massive amounts of capital to build factories. Today, the raw material for wealth is information, and the factory is your mind. An idea protected by law and built out with a solid business system, the BI triangle, can become an asset worth millions or even billions. You don't need permission. You don't need a fancy degree. You need vision, courage, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. This is why Kiyosaki's work is so enduring. It's not just about getting rich. It's about empowerment. It's about realizing that you don't have to be a passive participant in the economy, hoping your retirement account will be enough. You can be an active creator. So what can you do right now to start applying these lessons? Here are 3 simple, practical actions inspired by the book. First, make a conscious choice. Take a quiet moment and ask yourself Rich Dad's foundational question. What is my financial priority? Is it to be secure, to be comfortable, or to be rich? Be honest with yourself. There's no right or wrong answer, but knowing your true priority will bring incredible clarity to all your future financial decisions. Second, start your financial education today. Don't be intimidated. You don't need an MBA. Start with the vocabulary. Learn one new financial term each week. What is a PE ratio? What is cash flow? What's the difference between an asset and a liability in the way Rich Dad defines them? Words shape our reality. By expanding your financial vocabulary, you begin to see the world through an investor's eyes. And third, consider starting a small, part-time business. And here's the key. Do it not for the money, but for the education. The goal isn't to get rich overnight. The goal is to learn. Start a small online store, join a network marketing company with good training, or turn a hobby into a small service. The experience you'll gain in sales, in communication, in managing cash flow, in facing rejection and overcoming it is the most valuable real-world MBA you could ever get. It's in the process of building something, even something small, that you'll discover your entrepreneurial spirit. Ultimately, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing is a call to action. It's a challenge to stop being average, to stop thinking like an employee, and to start thinking like an owner. It's a reminder that wealth isn't just about accumulating money. It's about developing the mindset and the skills to create value in the world. And that is a journey worth taking. We've covered some incredible ground today, exploring the core ideas of Rich Dad's Guide to Investing by Robert Kiyosaki. But a summary, no matter how detailed, is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The map can show you the landmarks, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the trails, meeting the people, and breathing the air. The real magic of a book like this happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is your map. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or resonated with your ambitions, I encourage you to take the next step. Grab a copy of the book, because reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your financial future. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to our channel. It tells us we're on the right track, and it ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep growing and learning together.